Representative Whittick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the body, take a deep breath. What do you smell? Kind of smells like a pig farm. This is a pork barrel project bill. We have projects from all over the state. They're not the highest priority projects. We didn't prioritize the things that were the most important. We prioritized the things that were the least important. And not only did we do that, but my biggest concern with the bill is debt. Why do we need to bond? Because the governor has decided arbitrarily that there will be a $300 million ending fund balance. And to get all the projects that he and we supposedly want, we need to bond. But let's look at debt a little bit in this state. We currently have a $3.8 billion with a B unfunded liability for our pensions. We also have an additional $3 billion with a B other unfunded liability, and we have $850 million worth of additional debt. I'm not on the Appropriations Committee, but I have stayed at Holiday Inn. It looks like it's about $7.8 billion. And our biennial budget every 2 years is $11 billion. So we have the cash available now. We know we have at least $50 million, and that achieves the $300 million ending fund balance. And if we change that ending fund balance, arbitrary decision, we could have another 50 or 100 million. It's not just the debt. We have done a number of things this session that will create budget pressure on our budget for years to come. We expanded Medicaid, and we don't know what the federal match will be, but eventually we're looking at anywhere from $50 to $150 million a year with that decision. We have an additional $47 million that we've incurred for the compact after we pay the $8 million down payment. Members of the body, we have a state health plan that is not very healthy. You will see things coming before the 2017 session with major changes to our state health plan because it's in the red. So what we have, and by the way, I forgot on Medicaid. Every state that has expanded Medicaid, the actual enrollments have exceeded the projections. And in 6 states, they exceeded the projections by over 100%. That means it was over double what was originally predicted that would enroll in Medicaid. We predict 40,000 people will be on Medicaid with Senate Bill 405. I think we should count on higher than that, and I think that the financial obligation will be higher. On the bill, I'll talk about the bill. Look at Section 16. What we are also doing is we are changing the cap for local governments. This debt that they will incur through these matching programs will not be subject to their current mill cap. And look at what the other exceptions are in that section. That's current law. Things like emergency mill levies. You tell me what the emergency is about the Montana Heritage Center. You tell me what the emergency is about Romney Hall. Now, Romney Hall is a big deal in Bozeman. I also think that funding for Lewis and Clark Caverns is an important deal.
1 minute.
But this is not the way to do it. And this thinking that somehow this is our last chance, we all know that that's false. We need to kill this bill so we can go fix the bill and get a better bill for infrastructure. We know we have the money. We know we have the desire to improve some of our infrastructure. Not, quote, capital projects, which are not infrastructure. We can do better than this bill. This bill should die.
Representative Glim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know it's going to come as a big shock to everybody, but I'm against bonding. I just want to point out a couple things. The bonding that prior legislatures have encumbered us with now costs us about $30 million each time we come back. That's $30 million that we could be putting out there right now for projects in cash. And if we pay in cash, it's a done deal. We've talked a lot here in the last probably week and a half, 2 weeks about the Coal Trust Fund and the goose that lays that golden egg that we get to do all these TSEP projects with and all kinds of great things that we do because of the foresight of those legislators that came before us and put that money away. Well, bonding is the exact opposite of what that mechanism is. Bonding is encumbering future legislatures to have to pay this money back so that we can use it now. The Coal Trust Fund does exactly the opposite thing. It made them live within their means and put that tax money away so that someday it could pay benefits. I encourage you to know.
Representative Noonan.
Madam Chair, members of this body, I think when we came here in January, over 2 years of campaigning and everything else it took to get us here, we had all seen, if not at the very least heard, of the impacts the oil boom has caused in eastern Montana. And those of us that were here last session after last session, I think that we all agreed that mitigating those impacts and the collateral damage that has caused was something that we were going to do. Because I think that we all know that there is human capital to that collateral damage. And so we all know that we are at a point that we need to do something. And I think that a lot of us in this room can also agree that making an investment in the infrastructure for the future of Montana is important. And it is also a top priority. I think we're at a point that the last 2 sessions, I watched the former Vice Chair of Appropriations come within votes, and he would work so hard to get the infrastructure bill and come within votes every time. And every time that we miss the votes, the projects grow bigger, the priority grows more severe, and the bill needs to become bigger to ever catch up. So the longer that we push it off under this notion that is an ideological fight we're having about bonding, and I'm not saying who's right or wrong, but it's an ideological fight we're having that we've inserted into infrastructure. And as long as we're going to have that fight, it's only going to get bigger and it's going to be harder to make the investment. And I can tell you, I didn't think that an infrastructure bill would be this tricky until this morning. And now I understand what the former vice chair went through when he tried to put an infrastructure bill together. And have people stand up and say that this is a pork barrel bill is really a mischaracterization. It's the same level of mischaracterization to imply that somehow Laurel has been pulled out of this bill. There's a reason there isn't a whole bunch of separate projects listed. Capital projects had to be listed because they don't come in, they're state-owned buildings. So they fall differently than all of the county projects who will be applying. So the moment that we wanted to start listing projects, you can imagine what was going to happen. That if we were going to sit in the room and list projects, then I would agree with the senator from Bozeman, or with the representative from Bozeman, that then this thing would have got out of hand. How many people would walk in the morning and say, well, where is my project? So this seemed like the absolute fairest way to bring everybody together, because we started this talk under the notion that we all liked, well, some of us, liked a bill that brought everybody together. And this is what we all attempted to do here. Both sides of the aisle, what we're attempting to do is recognize we have collateral damage to mitigate in eastern Montana, and we have a severe need to build infrastructure. And everybody in that room, and everybody in this room, I will tell you right now, has made a sacrifice in this bill. Every person in this room has made a sacrifice in this bill. And if we want to talk about pork projects, I know when you flip through the bill, you'll find the Southwest Montana Veterans Home. And it's always kind of a joke around here that Butte always manages to get their projects in. But I'll tell you right now, having the Southwest Montana Veterans Home in here wasn't because Butte didn't sacrifice. The Southwest Montana Veterans Home costs no money to the state. It's a loan that's guaranteed to be paid back by the federal government. But what Butte did in the process was we threw over $10 million for tech. Every Hard Rock community in
1 minute.
this room gave up a year's worth of the bill that we passed to get extra money, the extra dime for every Hard Rock community off that tax. You all gave that up for a year to be a part of this bill. So every community made a sacrifice in an attempt to build a better Montana. We have to mitigate what is happening in eastern Montana, and we have an obligation to build infrastructure, and the longer we wait, the further we get away. The time is now. The time is now to make this investment. I say vote yes.
Representative Essman.
Members of the committee, I know it's a difficult decision to vote yes on a bill there's something you don't like on. If there's something in that, I was, taught by an early mentor, a no vote's a lot easier to explain. And it is. You can find one thing in a bill you don't like and hit that red button. The other thing I've learned in my service is that, when a bill comes, if I could pass a bill just by myself, I could get some dandy policies into law, some just dandy policies. And I've introduced a lot of bills that I thought were dandy policies, but guess what? Not everybody looks at it the same as I do. They mark them up, they amend them, hell, half of them they kill. That's part of what happens here. And the other part of what happens here is that, sometimes you need to take some bad with the good. Now, maybe I'd be a lot happier doing everything all with cash like we did it last session, but and I do want to state one frustration. These are projects that I think need to be taken care of in terms of the TSEP things that didn't make the cut, some of the other things that didn't make the cut. And I understand the concern about, the roofs on the schools and everything. But in talking with the chairman of the Long Range Building Subcommittee, I think our communities around the state need to start taking responsibility in the long run for setting up some reserves. Whether it's our ditch companies, our towns, our school districts, you need to be planning ahead for these major expenses. You shouldn't just run your infrastructure systems to the point they're broke and then come here and say, I've got an emergency. I've got something that can't wait, and we can't afford to bond for it. You need to plan ahead. I had to do that in my little small business. I knew that equipment wasn't going to last forever. I was going to have to replace it. That means I saved for it so when the time came, I could write that check. That's where we need to go. But where we are is where we are. And I'm going to support this bill despite the fact that I don't like everything in it, because I think these needs that are in here, and the schools are not in here because the other chamber didn't want them in here. They negotiated long and hard over that. So that's the reason they're not here. That was a compromise they made. We've got a compromise here in front of us today. I'm going to support it. I think it's in the best interest of the most people. And frankly, I'm going to do it in part because I don't believe the rosy revenue estimates. I tried to blast that bill out here a couple of days ago so we could look at it because, frankly, I don't think our revenues are going to be, climbing through the biennium. We might hit that second trigger, but I don't think there is a chance in a place John Cecil would use a four-letter word for that we'll hit that third trigger. I don't. And for that reason, from my perspective, putting some people to work with this when economic activity declines is a good thing, and that's why I'm going to support it.